High roller. Every guy on the planet would only commit to a woman with a low body count. Is there any? No, they wouldn't. I got the stats to show it. Every guy on the planet would only commit to a woman with a low body count. Is there any sign you can understand if a woman has a high one? Well, yeah. It's called Instagram. It's called OnlyFans. I mean, there's some pretty obvious signs. You can probably, especially if she's upfront about it. But the thing is no. More to your point, though. Every guy on the planet would commit to a woman with a low body count. I don't think so. There's plenty of guys who are wifing up ex-porn stars. There are youth pastors who are wifing up ex-porn stars. I can show you those articles too. That was part of the conversation that we had actually on Access Vegas. Man, I should just play Access Vegas and let you guys see all of that. But no, I mean, that's the problem is like when we talk about the 80-20 rule, like when we look at the 80% of guys who are unattractive. Well, maybe they did something, they increased their value added enough to the point where they can wife up a single mommy, or they can wife up an ex-porn star or an OnlyFans girl who regrets all of that and wants to have a new start, turn over a new leaf and go to church and do things the right way. And you're going to have to wait for this cooter this time because I'm going to make sure that I'm respected before I have like that girl. There are plenty. Those 80% of guys, the 80%ers, they're happy to wife that up. Absolutely. So see, that's the thing that gets me is like when we have this conversation about like, oh, those guys, they want to say that that nothing else will do but a virgin bride. Bullshit. They're happy to wife up single mommies. They're happy to wife up damaged women. They're happy to wife up, like we just said this a second ago. They're happy to wife up a girl who's like, who hits them. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Of course they will. Of course they will. Anything that can, the shortest distance between point A and point B, it's sexual deprivation. That's another thing I don't think Jordan Peterson's probably going to get into in the marriage, video set, the 3-volume set. No. Was it Chris Rock, or was it Chris Rock? Oh, no, it was Eddie Murphy. If you're in the desert and somebody throws you a cracker, it's the best it tastes like filet mignon. And you have more crackers and you're like, damn, that's just a cracker. That's what I mean. It's abundance mentality right there. But the thing is guys who are in the scarcity mentality, and that is the vast majority of guys. Like, yeah, I wouldn't wife up anything but the most perfect girl. I put this on the girls too. By the way, I held their feet to the fire for this because like nothing but the best will do. Don't settle for anything less than the best. That's exactly the same narrative that you'll hear from like the more spurgy side of the black pill. The guys are like, well, I wouldn't wife them up because they're not worth my while. I have more respect for myself than that. I'd rather jerk off, which is what you're doing anyways, than have to go to those clubs and see those collagen lips and we need a nice, good country girl from Kentucky, Paducah, Kentucky. And then when they get that girl, they don't know what the hell to do with her. Oh, well, she's got a low body count. Oh, but doesn't have a no body count. So we got to check her off the list. Like those guys would wife her up. Those guys are the guys that are like, those are the guys who are spending small fortunes on their OnlyFans girls. That's who. There's still that want for connection. So don't give me this bullshit about like, oh, well, nothing than the best will do. And by the way, I would say the same thing about women too, because women's list of criteria, like we talked about, was Royce calls it the 436 bullet point checklist. Like he also has, and I should bring this, I should go look this up and read this to you. There's also an essay, I think it's from 2009, and it's Royce saying like, I'm kind of trying to remember the title here, but the title was something like women's standards crumble like a house of cards in reality or something like that. So the whole blog post, and this is as far back as 2009, is about like his experience talking to some girl friend of a friend kind of thing who was saying, I want a guy who's an Ivy League, graduate. I need a guy who's got a 6-pack abs. I need a guy who's gets paid. I need a guy who's drives in his car 666, basically before there was a 666. I want him to be like all of these things. And then later in the blog, he says, and then of course what she does is she goes out with a guy who's a bartender who's hot, but like certainly doesn't meet any of the criteria she was talking about like just a week or two before. And so the whole essay was about the analysis of how women can rattle off all kinds of things about the criteria of the things that they find attractive, maybe not necessarily arousing, but the things that when nothing less will do. I won't marry a guy unless he meets this criteria. Same thing with the black pill doomers. I won't marry a woman unless she's got a low body count. I won't marry a woman unless she's, some country girl from, the back country girl. Right? No, you wouldn't. You would marry. You would definitely settle for something that was like very immediate, and that's why guys go back to the sure thing. Same reason why women go back to the sure thing. It's not because they're sticking to that criteria. Oh, sure, it sounds good. It's great on paper. Great advertising. It's great on paper. But then when you look at okay, well, he still knocked off a few of those things on the checklist, but certainly not that like high standard. And what happens then? And I'm gonna give people some flowers here, but what happens then is when we see what really happens, what women are really willing to settle for or compromise themselves for. And by the way, the older they get, the more they're willing to compromise. And that's kind of the dirty trick of like biology and evolution. But the more their sexual agency declines, those, like I said, those priorities change. And so the things that are going to be a definite deal breaker, trust me, the guy that she's with, he doesn't have any of those, that criteria, or he's got a few of those things. Because at some point, even Stephanie, and God bless her, I love that girl. The girl is right next to me on Access Vegas. She wants to get married. She really, sincerely, genuinely wants to settle down, have babies, and be, Tori has told me the same thing. She genuinely wants to settle down and have kids and blah, blah, blah. And they're in really tough shape because they have, they've got a digital footprint. And I love Tori to death. I fell in love with Stephanie the minute I saw her. She kind of reminded me of my daughter, right? I'm like, I want to help you, but I'm there, and it's like, but you kind of played yourself in some ways, and it might not necessarily be. You're certainly not going to want to, be wifed up by any of these guys who are like saying, "Oh, only the best will do." But it's like, so on one side, you've got women, and not feminists, just regular, average, normal women saying, I want this, here's my bullet point checklist for all the things that this is a criteria you must meet for me to actually want to emotionally invest myself in you. And then on the other side, you got these guys who popularly, they're not the guys they would actually get with, but then you've got this other sort of faction of guys in the in the black pill, saying, well, I would never get with her. How come we can't get some nice girl from Tulsa, Oklahoma? How come we can't get how come you're not interviewing normal girls, Rolo? Those guys, they have a criteria too. And you know what? That criteria crumbles like a house of cards just as much as it crumbles like a house of cards for really high value women too. He'll do. Hopefully he can meet some of those criteria in the future. He has potential to meet some of these on the checklist in the future. I'll go with this guy. Women are never going to have a turnkey relationship just as much as a man's never going to have a turnkey relationship. And it's time we actually laid that shit out there. If that's what you're even looking for, is a relationship.